Hello everybody, welcome to review number 6 on the original Ratchet & Clank, only for the PlayStation 2. This game is created by Insomniac Games and began the Ratchet & Clank series after jump shifting to the PS2 and finishing off the Spiral trilogy on the PS1. Same way that Naughty Dog started the Jak and Daxter series after Crash Bandicoot. Ratchet & Clank is this generation of Mega Man because they do seem to make another game of the series, changing a few things, but the formula of the game is basic from the start, so if it's not broken, don't fix it. The Ratchet & Clank series today are most memorable for having RPG elements, upgrading weapons, and Ratchet himself. The original Ratchet & Clank does not have any of those RPG elements. Ratchet & Clank 2 did, but gave us a platformer that's unique and original from having another typical platformer with cute characters, but rather have weapons, gadgets, puzzling elements, and so much more. In the galaxy called Solania Galaxy, the evil Chairman Drek has been focusing on a little small problem. The problem was each planet was getting overpopulated, polluted, and poisonous that many are no longer to dwell anywhere in the Solania Galaxy. His solution was to use his power and technology to extract large portions of many planets and add it to his new planets. But unfortunately, it would cause those planets to spin out of control and drift into the sun. Drek's plot in making a planet for himself to rule will make other planets destroy themselves, leaving countless lives to be lost. On planet Quartu, Drek's assembly line were producing large amounts of robots used to do Drek's dirty work when suddenly a machine that the robot makes, MOM or Mom, made an error and a small curious robot emerges. That robot will soon be called Clank, and later in the series we will learn that Orpheus from Crack in Time is Clank's creator. Anyway, back to the story. The little robot encounters an infobot that has a recording of Drek's plan to create his new planet. Horrified by what he saw, he was caught by security and forced to take the enemy ship and escape. Meanwhile, on planet Veldin, a Lombax named Ratchet was fixing the ship, which appears that he's trying to leave Veldin, but unfortunately doesn't know how to fix it. Moments later, he saw a ship crash landing. Ratchet went to the crash site and found a little robot and took him in. Later, Ratchet became friends with the robot. The robot was looking for a hero, Captain Quark, to help him stop Drek. The robot helped Ratchet to fix the ship, and after liftoff, Ratchet gave the robot a name. Together, they began their journey in searching for Captain Quark and stopping Drek. Ratchet & Clank is unlike any other platformer during its time. You're now able to use various weapons to defeat your enemies and use gadgets to get places that you can't reach physically. Beginning with the basics, throughout the game you play as Ratchet, carrying Clank on your back. If you played other Ratchet & Clank games before this one, then you'll be surprised on how much you have to collect because all the gadgets and items that some of you Ratchet & Clank fans take for granted all begins here. When you begin the game, you only have a wrench, that will always be in the series, and a bomb glove. Clank doesn't have his propellers or his rockets, but you will get them in later in the game. Like in all Ratchet & Clank games, you have bolts, which can be found in crates, enemies, and elsewhere, to collect, and you can use them to buy weapons and ammos from the Gadgetron vendors. Or you can buy items and gadgets from whatever character you encounter. The game does not have a bolt multiplier, even when you restart the game in challenge mode, so that means when you see a bolt or a crate, get it, because everything that Ratchet needs to buy is expensive. Since this game does not have RPG elements or the ability to upgrade weapons, you can buy a better quality of weapons or golden weapons from the first level of the game and the Gimlick base. For these type of weapons, it costs over 10,000 bolts plus multiple golden bolts. Gold bolts are special bolts that are hidden in special areas. Since there are more than one gold bolt in every level, you have to look very deep to actually find one. There are a total of 35 weapons and gadgets that can be collected in this game, and only starting with 2 weapons. Like all Ratchet & Clank games, Ratchet always carries his wrench everywhere he goes and uses them for melee attacks and various uses. Since you have to start from scratch, you don't have an oxygen mask, jet, or hover pack for Clank and gravity boots or grind boots. You'll have to buy them from other characters in various levels. Every level is divided into different planets, and to change a level you have to get into a ship and select to wherever you want to go. Each level has more than one mission to do, and so you have multiple directions to go in every planet. Since some of those missions leads to different locations where you have to buy a weapon or a gadget, or the object of the game, collecting infobots in order to get another level. But sometimes you can't get to the location of the infobot because you need a certain gadget to get through the stuff that's in your way. This means that you should go to the location where they have the gadget / upgrade that will help you retrieve the infobot. Make sure that you have to complete everything in the level if possible. Once you reach the location of the infobot, there's always a cinematic cutscene of the level that you're going next. During the game, you'll be encountering a lot of puzzles and mini-games like flying jets, hoverboard racing, unlocking doors, and many more. Occasionally, however, Clank becomes a playable character when Ratchet is unable to explore in certain levels of the area. Plus, there are a lot of secrets to unlock and unfold. Around the time when I got my PlayStation 2, I found out that there was going to be a new Spyro game coming out in 2002. When I got the game, I was pissed off at the fact that the game was total garbage. I thought to myself that getting a PS2 was a big mistake because old franchises weren't good as they were in the PlayStation 1 days. But little did I know that the PlayStation 2 was warming up for a bright future in gaming. Around spring 2003, my family and I were planning to visit Japan for a spring vacation. I didn't remember exactly where I've been in the vacation, but I remembered that we visited the Sony building. I'll never forget the time when we encountered the PlayStation spot. I don't quite remember some of the games we played, but I did remember that we played Ratchet and Clank, and it became a must-buy PlayStation 2 game for me. After our trip in Tokyo, our next stop was Okinawa. We visited Kadena to meet my childhood friend, who was deployed from Osan, Korea. She was the same friend that I told you about my Osan trip and influenced me to get a PS1. You can see that story on my Spyro 2 review. Anyway, I remember we went to her room and tried out her PS2 and remembered that we played a lot of Ratchet and Clank and Crazy Taxi and so much more. I was surprised that Insomniac Games, the developers who made the original Spyro the Dragon, is working on this new series. When I got back to Korea, I finally got a chance to get Ratchet and Clank, and to this day I still play the game. Half of the weapons in this game weren't as interesting. Even when I first played the game, I thought to myself, who's actually going to enjoy using these weapons? What's this, the bomb glove, taunter, decoy, walloper? Some of these weapons I wasted my bolts on and never seem to use them. Speaking of switching weapons, when I'm in battle and trying to switch weapons, this weapon switching manual does not pause the game, so when you're trying to switch weapons, do it when you're away from your enemies. What disappointed me was that the swimming mechanics were just as bad as any other video game. I'm making this criticism because in my Spyro 2 review, I mentioned that it's the best swimming mechanics ever put in a video game. Now, to the jump to the PS2, it's just boring. My biggest criticism in the game is to be controlling those gadget bots as you play Clank. As much as I love playing Clank, controlling those little robots are just as frustrating. When one of your gadget bot dies, you have to go back to the place where you actually found that gadget bot. Without these gadget bots, you won't be able to defeat your enemies or open a gate. But when you travel far away from the location where you found the gadget bots, it takes a lot of time to actually go back and get them when they die. Also, the gadget bots AI is just too much to handle because they don't normally do as you command, and sometimes they just run into a wall. This becomes a big problem, especially when you're in a maze like this. One of my favorite parts in the game is the level designs. Whenever you're in a planet, you can see a great view of the level. Each level along with the music is excellent. Each song in the level is just epic along with those electronic effects which makes the futuristic feel. My favorite level has to be Blackwater City because it's dark and the music is probably the Ratchet and Clank's series' most recognizable theme song. Speaking of dark, I also love the graphics because they are nice and dark, which makes the details for the game very interesting. This game, unlike other Ratchet and Clank games, has a lot of dark details in the game, which always reminds me of how mind-blowing the graphics were in 2002. Going back now, I really love Ratchet's voice in the game. Most critics back then really hated Ratchet's voice, but Mike Kelly, also known as the voice of Michelangelo of today's TMNT, did a great job at adding pretty cool personality on Ratchet's voice. But I am glad that they did not change the voice for Clank. Many critics criticize the story and the character development, but when you look at it this way, Ratchet and Clank's relationship in the game as they go along gets really deep for platformer standards. But I'm glad that they didn't continue fighting each other throughout the series because it will feel like Rush Hour all over again. Sure, the beginning of the game is probably not interesting, but when you realize that Captain Quark's your enemy, you'll be shocked, and all Ratchet and Clank games have a story cliffhanger. I think my favorite weapon of the entire game has to be the suck cannon because it's so creative and original to actually swap up your enemies in your cannon and fire back at them at your other enemies. What this game has that the other games of the series doesn't have is having the ability to hover when Clank is on a jet. Now that's cool. I know that some of you guys who played other Ratchet & Clank games before the original might think that this is boring because there are no RPG elements and there aren't enough items from the beginning as you were expecting. But if you guys give this game a chance, you'll realize that starting from scratch is actually kind of fun. Having to start from nothing into the stuff that some of us took for granted in the series just feels great. Even though there isn't a lot in this game, it's the adventure and the challenge of the game that I will always remember about this game. It's not the best Ratchet & Clank game. In my opinion, the best ones were Going to Commando, Up Your Arsenal, and the Future series, but it's a game that's very unique in its very own way. This game is a platformer for teenagers and young adults, even if there aren't blood and violence. I've been a fan of the series for many years now, and going back to the original Ratchet & Clank reminds me of how I began being a Ratchet & Clank fan. It has and always will be fun. That's why my score for the original Ratchet & Clank is a 5 fingers out of 5. And to celebrate my favorite video game series, I'm going to put a tribute to the Ratchet & Clank series on my next video. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to post up my very first top 10 list, and it's a list of my top 10 favorite weapons of the Ratchet & Clank series. All my years of enjoying the adventure and using the weapons, I'm going to give up my opinion on what I say is the best weapon of the series. Please click here to watch the top 10 list right now. Till then, if you like this review, please subscribe.